I'm quite surprised when I go online and see discourse about Hazbin Hotel, specifically in regards to its original pilot. I know a lot of people have very torn emotions on the series itself, but the general consensus is that the pilot didn't particularly age the best. But I'm left kind of scratching my head because, well, I think the Hazbin Hotel pilot is the best thing to come out of Spindlehorse. Of course, it is a pilot, so it has to be pitching the series to its audience rather than making a compelling first episode. However, I still find it to be an overwhelmingly sound and impressive piece of animation. I frequently think back to its somber opening, an introduction set to a cover of I'm Always Chasing Rainbows sung by the protagonist Charlie Morningstar. It does not fall into the trope of most animated opening acts and just dumps copious amounts of exposition about the world, characters, and lore. It instead respects the audience's attention to pick up on these things subtly, first through a shadow puppet animation showing us the sinners rejected by heaven, sent down into a crowded hell only to be slaughtered by divine angels. A girl stands below them, weeping for her people as she pleads for guidance, pleads that go unheard. We then transition into our main setting, hell, as we see the desolate nightmare city in the aftermath of a genocide. Uniquely, we are also shown mysterious figures of indisputable privilege above the average sinner in their ivory towers, some seemingly being opportunistic of said genocide. And of course, we see the singer herself, who has to watch and endure this horror she has no doubt experienced dozens of times. We end on the tolling of a clock tower that begins to count down their days once again. The pilot, moving on, is able to properly balance its later chaos with clear intentionality in order to establish the key character dynamics, world building, and expectations of the series going forward. So when I look at the full Hazbin Hotel series as it currently stands with 2 seasons with a 3rd on the way, I cannot help but feel disappointed by the end result. Now, I want to be fair, Hazbin Hotel, when it hit streaming, had everything going against it. We live in a world where animation is the most undervalued medium ever, and we can no longer get 20 episode seasons with 22-minute long episodes anymore. We now have to suffer the consequences of the popularity of Stranger Things and have to accept the fact that we are stuck with 8 half-hour long episodes forever. The show also seems to suffer with too many cooks in the kitchen. With the original pilot just having 3 writers and a script doctor, the full series has an egregious 15 writers for 8 episodes, which I don't even know how that is possible. Hazbin Hotel also suffered from tons of bad faith criticisms that clearly affected the quality of the final show. Hazbin Hotel was co-opted by grifters who just wanted to see the series fail rather than provide any actual criticism, which I plan to make a video about on its own, but that does not mean I think the show is exempt from criticism because of the limitations set upon it. So how do I approach this? I think the best place to start is by articulating why I think the very premise of Hazbin Hotel just does not work. In the pilot, it was pretty simple. Hell has an overpopulation problem that leads heaven to come down to thin out the numbers through a yearly genocide. The Princess of Hell, Charlie Morningstar, opens a hotel to rehabilitate sinners to earn a spot in heaven. Pretty simple. Charlie has to prove that our idea works, that redemption is both possible, and that sinners are worthy of redemption. Great! How does the show fuck this up? Well, now, it's no longer about overpopulation, but instead, heaven thins out the numbers in order to prevent an uprising. So, what the fuck is the hotel for? Giving sinners the option to be redeemed is not consequential to heaven's fears of an uprising. We see as much in season 2, where despite the fact they were shown that sinners can be redeemed when Sir Pentious was led into heaven after a sacrifice, it was debated if this was even enough to end the genocide. Because despite the fact redemption is possible, the narrative routinely justifies their fear of a hypothetical uprising because there are sinners who have zero interest in being redeemed, such as when Vox launched an attack against heaven in season 2, showing that these two things do not inherently affect the other, they are entirely separate issues. Charlie might be sparing those who arrived at heaven from a genocide, but it doesn't outright solve the root issue. In addition, it doesn't automatically make those in heaven a protected class. Charlie's dad was an angel cast out of heaven. Charlie's girlfriend was an angel cast out of heaven. There is a deeper conspiracy going on in heaven about the tides turning in the ruling class. The issue was never a protected group of people, but maintaining a specific balanced power structure, one that the hotel does nothing to fix. So why is the hotel here? We spend so much time setting up this hotel, it is the fucking name of the show. But we are 2 seasons deep and the hotel still isn't relevant. What started as an exploration of morality, forgiveness, and redemption amongst the worst and seedy of people has just turned into a story about war, where a bunch of badass OCs can fight and be power scaled, and all the hype aura and moments that come from its big awesome climactic finale each season. Which, yeah, I think they underdeveloped their story in exchange for cooler spectacle. Another big issue with these these seasons is that it wastes a lot of time on things that won't be relevant until God knows how many episodes later. Two major examples of time wasters in this series are the characters Zestial and Lute. Zestial is an overlord who seems to have some major emotional stakes in the other characters such as Alistair and Carmilla, but he has yet to have been a relevant active force in the story. We don't know who he is, what he wants, and why we should care. Insisting that your character is important just because the story demands him to be is not at all captivating. Then later in season 2, secondary antagonist Lute has a massive show-stopping number about wanting to seek vengeance for the killing of Adam, someone who she was apparently in love with. But she then proceeds to do nothing the entire season, and when she finally invades Hell in a matter of like a minute, she gets called a bitch by Abel and then she just gives up. That's it. Her whole intense Scorched Earth song means nothing in the wake of this badass misogyny moment. Apparently she's gonna be important later, but I don't know how much later given how we have confirmation that the third season is gonna focus on Valentino as the main antagonist. So why the hell would you set this up 2 seasons in advance? This just takes away from our already established cast, a cast that desperately needs more development time. Season 1 episode 3 features the cast going on team bonding exercises to release some of the tension amongst them, but we don't actually see what changes or develops. They just come back in the end closer and buddies, without even wavering an idea of what changed their mentality from loathing each other to genuinely caring, cause, you know, that time just had to be spent on the overlords we just fucking met. They need the screen time and dramatic musical numbers. Musical numbers, mind you, that feature Carmilla, a character we barely know anything about in the end of the episode, other than the fact that she's hesitant to join the war because she wants to protect her girls. But why should we care? Why is there any emotional stake in this? We just met her. Hell, I wasn't even quite sure what her relationship was with her girls initially, so I had no clue where to place my emotions. But I'm sure it was worth to sideline the actual main cast. I know a lot of people give TADC shit for only focusing on 3 members of its larger cast, but at the very least they are justified in being the main driving characters of its narrative. But this is like if out of nowhere, Digital Circus spent half of the series introducing a new gummy goo every other episode. Since most of the development of the other relationships between the main cast are done off screen, I barely feel anything. I don't know why everyone that isn't Charlie is mourning Sir Pentious when he dies. What the fuck do you even know about him? What changed from some of you actively wanting to kill him to treating his loss at the same weight you would a family member? In episode 5, he gets dragged off screen and raped, and no one really says anything or consoles him, including Angel Dust. Which, reminder, in episode 4, it has a very serious and straightforward narrative about Angel's trauma and sexual abuse at the hand of Valentino. Juxtaposed to this, it is a complete tonal whiplash, which is especially weird because this is the exact same episode where all of Angel's friends help comfort him after he was abused by Val. And like, not any acknowledgement of Sir Pentious, who also just experienced similar abuse. You think this could have been a good bonding moment to connect Angel to Pentious, but not at all, they didn't do anything? Which, side tangent, this joke is incredibly in poor taste. You can be a black comedy and a drama, but you need to know how to balance those elements so the actual drama of your narrative doesn't come off as insincere. When BoJack Horseman nearly commits statutory rape in the episode Escape from LA, it isn't undercut, it's played completely straight throughout the series. The only time it was the subject of a joke is when the tabloids got their hands on the story, and we as the audience see BoJack gradually get his comeuppance in the way where his career is drastically unraveling. It isn't making a joke about the action itself, more of a joke on BoJack because the wider world is finally going to see how much of a pathetic creep he is. Its humor in general also suffered a lot in the final series, but that's going to be its own video, so try to stick around for that. It's a mess. Thoroughly a mess. Too many ideas being crammed into one season that ultimately results in none of it being actually satisfying. They just sort of rush everything out the door, even if it means nothing has any actual stakes or weight to it. The big twist of episode 6 was revealing to Charlie that her partner, Vaggie, was once an angel that slaughtered thousands of her people. But this barely has any actual consequences. They are apart from each other for like a day, but don't do anything on either end to show how they're going to recover from this. Like when Charlie sees her again, she automatically forgives her. Not even a conversation about the nuances of this situation. They just brush it aside because it's the ending, and we don't have enough time to develop that drama any further. Man, if only there was some way we could have found more time to flesh out their relationship and the toll this revelation had on them. Vaggie doesn't do much on her end either. She gets weapons from Carmilla and sings a song about fighting for love as if that was the missing piece of the puzzle in Vaggie's life or whatever. When Vaggie already knew that. That was her whole motivation. That's why she went to Carmilla. formula. That's why she stood beside Charlie the entire series. I don't know exactly what Vaggie is learning and how she is taking that back to her relationship to redeem herself. But what? Defined character arcs? Fuck that. We need to shove in as much lore as humanly possible. Which brings me to the last thing. The very last thing about the series that irks me. It is small, but encompasses everything wrong with Hazbin Hotel fundamentally. It does not think its audience is very smart. In the intro to episode 1, they do a new version of the pilot intro, but remove all the artistic value, subtlety, and nuance. Instead, it is just a spoon-fed lore dump about the origins of Hell, Lucifer, and the exterminations. It doesn't just let us fill in that information ourselves, it just ham-fists the narrative to us. It is no longer a story, it just becomes a checklist of information it needs to communicate to us out of a Wikipedia article. There is no sense of discovery or unraveling the world in any satisfying way, it's just lore. Heavy-handed info dumps in exchange for telling a story naturally is ideal for the streaming world. A perfect show to watch while you're folding your laundry. Nearly all the resources in the world, and it somehow undoes everything good it had going for it, mainly because it refuses to kill its darlings. What value does keeping every possible idea they had give the show? How significant was Mimsy or Baxter or Zester or Velvet that they all needed to be here in the same place at the same time? Take Rosie for example. What does she have other than adding complications to the all-around narrative? Alistair just can't be a guy who revels in hell like it were his heaven and seeks joy out of seeing those fail as he gradually gains more and more power. Now he's a servant to Rosie and uses the hotel as leverage to break free from his chains through a complicated gambit with Vox. And I just don't care. If it's all just gonna be undone by the end of the season, why the hell would you add this needless complication? There isn't really a finger you can point to and blame for this. There's just a lot of cogs in this machine that blaming just one wouldn't be the full truth. But it just goes to show that the very predatory practices of the entertainment industry needing to streamline art to be digestible but not have any actual substance to it has greatly tarnished the integrity of shows like Hazbin Hotel. If there's anything that the show does well on, is that it knows how to optimize an audience. Introduce about 24 marketable, aesthetically appealing characters that would be perfect to stan or buy merch of. It knows how to make a fandom, it knows how to make discourse, and that supports our bottom line more than just making something of significant quality. I want Hazbin Hotel to get better. I'm going to watch each new season because despite my extreme disappointment, the potential it displayed was just so great that I hold out hope that it returns to that messy little corny world I fell in love with in 2019. I still see a bit of soul peeking through, and if the show wants me to believe redemption is possible for anyone, I believe the show has the capability of doing that as well. And that's why I still, after all of this, consider myself a fan of this series. Anyway, I kinda went off the rails with this one, huh? It's kinda hard to stay focused with a show that suffers from a lack of it, but I appreciate you all sticking around. I wanna know what you guys think of Hazbin Hotel. I only really scratched the general surface of my thoughts. Please try to keep it contained to just the show itself and not any outside lingering drama about Vivzy Pop or Spindle Horse. That's not what this video is about. I would love to hear what you guys have to say otherwise. That's all the time I have for today. Thank you all so much for watching. I've been May, and I'll see you next time.